The silent rival in the quiet void beyond Neptune, something stirred far. From the watchful eyes of Earth's satellites and telescopes, a fleet of massive alien ships moved with eerie precision, cloaked in black energy that bent light around them. They drifted forward with purpose, as if they already knew everything about their target. They had waited in the darkness, studying, listening, preparing for the perfect moment to strike. And now their moment had come, and Earth life moved on with the usual noise and chaos. News anchors debated politics, children played in schools, and space agencies monitored harmless space rocks, never suspecting what lay just beyond their reach. At a small observatory in Chile, an operator named Juno Alvarez leaned forward in her chair, her brow furrowed at the strange blip dancing across her screen. It was too uniform to be a natural object, too silent to be one of Earth's own. And yet there it was again and again, blinking like a ghost, called her supervisor, who shrugged at first, but when the same blip showed up on other telescopes, and then was suddenly gone where he began to set in within hours. Whispers reached the Global Defense Command, a hidden agency built for events just like this, though it had never actually been used for its intended purpose. Earth's leaders gathered behind closed doors. Intelligence officers scrambled to confirm whether the threat was real or just another false alarm, but the signs kept building. Satellites near the Kuiper Belt stopped responding without warning. No explosions, no signals, just silence. One by one, their links went dark, as if something invisible was swallowing them. Fear spread quietly at first, but those with clearance knew something was wrong. And General Addison, head of Earth's orbital defense fleet, stood before a wall of holograms, staring at red dots blinking out across space. "We don't know who or what they are," he said to the council. "We only know they're coming." Meanwhile, in a deep space science vessel called Horizon, stationed near Mars, a crew of researchers scanned the void for answers. One of them, Dr. Lena Voss, noticed strange wave patterns in the subspace channels, like a low hum growing louder each hour. She knew it wasn't natural. She had studied cosmic radiation for years, and this was different. It was rhythmic, calculated, artificial. She pulled up the data, cross-referenced it with past anomalies, and saw something chilling. The same pattern had appeared decades ago in the Andromeda signal, a mystery that no one had ever solved. She brought it to Commander Raylan Cole, a decorated but retired war hero who had been assigned to the Horizon as a political gesture. But Raylan was no fool. He studied the data and saw what Lena saw. They're hiding something out there, Raylan muttered, eyes narrowing. "They're not just watching, they're planning." Raylan sent an encrypted message back to Earth's command, sharing everything the Horizon knew. But before the reply came, the ship's sensors lit up like wildfire. Unidentified objects approaching at high velocity. No response to hails, no visible engines, and no signs of heat. Raylan's instincts kicked in. "Battle stations now," he shouted. "Get shields up and reroute all power to sensors." The alien ships emerged from their cloak, not with lights or sound, but with silence that screamed through the stars. They were long, needle-shaped like black daggers, gliding across the void with impossible speed. One of them launched something, not a missile, not a beam, just a pulse of energy that disabled Horizon's systems like a god flipping a switch. Darkness filled the halls. Emergency lights flickered red, and Lena clutched her datapad as the ship trembled around her. Raylan moved through the chaos, barking orders as crew members tried to restore power. "We have to get this data back to Earth," he told Lena. "This can't end out here." Lena knew what to do. She sprinted to the deep core data vault, inserted a secured probe, and activated a launch system. A small stealth drone shot from the hull, carrying the Horizon's recordings and warnings toward Earth. Even if they didn't survive, someone had to know what was coming back on Earth. The drone was detected hours later and brought directly to General Addison, who listened in horror to the intercepted transmissions and analyzed the data feed from Horizon. There was no longer any doubt. This was not a drill. This was not a misunderstanding. An alien fleet had arrived, and its intentions were clear. World leaders were summoned to the Underground Unity Council. For the first time in 50 years, the order was given to activate the planetary shield grid and recall every military satellite from orbit. Raylan's last message echoed in the chamber. "We are outmatched, we are outnumbered, and we are outgunned, but we are not broken." Silence that had begun beyond Neptune was now creeping toward Earth itself, and everyone knew that silence would not last much longer. The world stood on the edge of something they could not fully understand, and had no time to prepare for. But deep in that fear, a spark was lit, something ancient and human, the instinct to fight back no matter the cost. And though the sky remained dark for now, humanity had begun to Styroth respond's world had changed in a matter of hours. Every major nation had gone into high alert, skies filled with surveillance drones, the ocean stirred with awakened submarines, and cities beneath the surface buzzed with military activity that had not seen the light of day for generations. The world's population was still unaware of the true threat. But within the walls of the underground Unity Council the truth was already shaping Earth's next move. General Addison stood before the world leaders, his voice calm but cold. We are facing a hostile alien fleet that has disabled one of our science vessels. They are now moving toward Earth. We estimate contact in less than 72 hours. President Zhao of the Eastern Federation leaned forward, arms on the table. How many ships do we know? The general tapped a screen, and the image of the enemy fleet appeared. Grainy but terrifying. 22 major capital vessels, multiple smaller escorts, unknown weapons. We have no idea what shields or armor they use, but we do know they are capable of disrupting our most advanced systems without detection or resistance. We are not ready to face them in orbit, not yet. The room filled with silence. No one wanted to admit how unprepared they were, but the facts spoke for themselves. Earth's defenses had never been tested against something like this. Alien life had always been a distant possibility, not an immediate threat, and while Earth had plenty of weapons, none had been built to fight enemies that could disable ships with a wave of energy. Then came the question everyone was waiting for. What do we do? General Addison straightened, and his eyes moved to a separate display, one that showed a different kind of fleet, one not stationed in orbit, but hidden across the planet in underground bases, in high-altitude hangars, and even in the deep sea. We call them the Black Projects, the general said. A last line of defense created over the decades, based on fragments of recovered alien tech, experimental weapons, piloted by people trained in environments and conditions unlike any known battlefield. These are not standard troops, these are humans built for wars that do not exist yet, and now they are our only hope. They are not just soldiers, they're volunteers from the Off-Earth Initiative, the ones sent to colonize Mars and Titan, who trained under crushing pressure and isolation. They've seen more than most of us can imagine, and they are not bound by the old rules. They are wild, brilliant, dangerous, and exactly what we need. The Council hesitated. Calling in the Black Projects meant revealing a secret buried for decades, but after minutes of debate the decision was unanimous. Earth would not go down without unleashing its full potential. An encrypted signal went out to hidden locations across the globe. Deep beneath the Nevada desert in Facility E9, an alarm blared through the walls. Lights flickered and a voice echoed through the concrete halls. Protocol Omega is in effect. All operators report for immediate deployment in a chamber sealed for 20 years. Metal walls opened to reveal rows of armored suits unlike anything on Earth. Sharp edges, glowing cores, hybrid tech designed from both human innovation and the scattered remains of alien wreckage recovered from old impact sites. Among the people waking up that moment was Cale Brennan, a former Mars colonist and one of the few who had survived the Europa collapse, a mission gone wrong, where an unknown force had wiped out his entire team. He had spent years training under gravity variations, learning to pilot mechs and ships under extreme conditions. Now, as he stood before his armor, he felt the weight of that survival return. You always knew this would come, he whispered to himself. He stepped into the exosuit, and systems came to life around him, scanning, sensing, adapting to his vitals. He walked toward the command chamber where others like him gathered, faces marked by scars and silence, all of them chosen not because they were the strongest, but because they had refused to. Deed squad, known as Phantom Zero, was activated across the globe. Other teams followed, each with unique specialties, from stealth infiltration to planetary artillery override. One team, led by a woman named Celine Royce, had trained in the volcano tunnels of Venus. Another, known as Echo Dust, operated entirely in zero-G environments, building combat strategies in places where sound and gravity vanished. Earth was not helpless. Earth had been preparing in secret, waiting for the moment when it would be pushed to the edge, and now that edge had come. While back in space, the alien fleet continued its silent advance, their ships pulsing with strange energy patterns, their path direct and without hesitation. But something had changed in their movements. A small probe launched from Earth had reached their vicinity, broadcasting an encoded message that repeated one phrase over and over: "We are coming for you." The alien command ship paused for just a moment, the first hesitation they had shown in their entire journey, and that pause was all humanity needed back on Earth. The Black Project teams began boarding their specialized transports, designed to reach orbit without traditional launch methods. Powered by dark matter reactors and gravitational slings, they would reach low orbit within minutes, ready to strike the moment the enemy entered firing range. Cale looked out the window of the rising transport, the blue of Earth fading behind him, replaced by the black canvas of war. His fingers tightened around the grip of his weapon, and he remembered the final words of Raylan Cole, the last message from the horizon: "We are outmatched, outnumbered and outgunned, but we are not broken, and now Earth was ready to prove just how true that was when monsters Whack-a-Kale sat silently inside the cockpit of his drop pod as the stars streaked out. Side the window, the transport hummed with a low vibration that matched the tension in his chest. The other members of Phantom Zero were suited and strapped in across from him, each one of them mentally preparing for what could be their final mission. They had trained for years in deep isolation. They had mastered technologies the rest of the world still believed to be impossible. And now they were being sent as the first wave to meet an enemy that had already crippled one of Earth's most advanced ships without warning. Gob of Earth's atmosphere, the alien fleet had entered a tactical position. Their ships hovered like massive shadows over the curvature of the planet, each vessel moving in perfect sync, guided not by separate minds, but something unified, something vast. The central ship at the heart of the formation was larger than any Earth station, and its surface shimmered with a kind of living metal that rippled as if it breathed. This was not a machine, this was something alive or controlled by something beyond ordinary intelligence, and it watched as Earth's first response launched upward, not from military bases, but from hidden scars in the planet's crust. Drop pods began their ascent, black capsules that looked more like meteors than spacecraft, but inside them humans sat silent, prepared minds sharpened not by command, but by instinct. Kel's pod connected to a formation of 6 others, each one belonging to a different operator in his squad. The AI navigation system pulsed in his ears, giving updates as the atmosphere round them grew thinner and the stars became clearer. Enemy fleet detected, range 30,000 kilometers, weapons offline, systems disruption field active, preparing countermeasure. Zero had been built for moments just like this, and Kale knew that the weapons they carried were not standard lasers or missiles. They carried vortex cannons built from fragments of dark energy harvested from a collapsed neutron lab, and their suits were bonded to their nervous systems, directly allowing movement faster than any drone could track. Kale clenched his jaw as the targeting data painted the sky around him in pale red arcs. His heart beat faster, but his hand stayed steady. He had done this before, but never against something that could think across light years. Suddenly a pulse rippled across space, a wave of invisible energy that struck the Earth orbiting defense satellites and blacked them out within seconds. The few space drones orbiting the planet went dead there, lights flickering out like candles in a storm. The alien fleet was asserting dominance. Without even firing a single shot, they were showing Earth how helpless it had become. But Earth had not yet shown its hand. Kel's pod trembled as it broke through the final layer of atmosphere and was caught in the magnetic acceleration rail of the outer defense platform, a hidden structure orbiting in stealth. Since the Mars rebellion decades ago, the station recognized Phantom Zero and boosted them outward, launching them toward the enemy at speeds no regular pilot could survive. The enemy's heart. Kale could feel the vibrations of his own pulse racing through his suit as the drop pods detached from the magnetic sling and drifted silently toward the alien fleet around him. The other members of Phantom Zero floated in formation, their pods gliding like silent arrows aimed straight at the core of something ancient and unyielding. The blackness of space surrounded them, but ahead the alien mothership pulsed with strange organic lights, each glow shifting in rhythm like a heartbeat. It was not metal, not glass, not technology in any human sense. It was something else. It was Alivek. Commander Rhea's voice crackled through the neural link, calm and sharp like the edge of a knife, reminding the squad that contact was not just probable, but inevitable. The alien fleet had sensors beyond human comprehension, and yet Phantom Zero's stealth tech remained undetected. The quantum displacement shields around each pod kept them hidden for now, but Kale knew it would not last long. The alien intelligence watching from the depths of the mothership would eventually feel their presence like a change in the wind, a tremor before a storm. They landed softly on the outer shell of the alien vessel, which was not a surface in any normal sense. It pulsed and flexed beneath their boots as if breathing. The ship responded to their presence, but did not yet attack. It was curious, perhaps underestimating them. Kale and his team activated the phase cutters, slicing a small opening in the surface. It peeled away like muscle, not tearing, but separating slowly, almost willingly, as if the ship had been waiting for someone to step inside. Inside the ship, everything changed. The walls moved, constantly shifting their shape without sound or warning. Strange veins pulsed with glowing liquid that seemed to react to human presence, and distant whispers filled their minds, not words, but emotions, curiosity, hunger, disappointment. The hive intelligence was aware of them, and it was not afraid. Kel's HUD flickered as strange signals interfered with their systems, but their onboard AI recalibrated fast enough to restore function. They moved deeper into the vessel, navigating through living tunnels that felt more like arteries than corridors. Lena The tech expert of the team stayed close to Kale, her eyes locked on the alien signals. She was reading something beneath the surface of the ship, not just its structure but its purpose, and she gasped as she decrypted one of the signals. This wasn't just a mothership, it was a birthing vessel. It created smaller attack ships from itself, growing them like cells from a single organism. It wasn't just a fleet, it was a species, and they had brought their Queen to Earth. Team pushed forward, passing strange alien constructs that shimmered with energy beyond understanding. At one point, a wall opened before them, revealing a chamber filled with floating pods, each one pulsing with life. Inside the transparent shells were creatures unlike anything Earth had cataloged, twisted forms, half organic, half machine. Their bodies adapted for destruction, but asleep for now. Lena whispered that these were prototypes, hybrids meant to mimic human forms, to study them, to possibly replace them. The aliens were not just here to conquer, they wanted to become the dominant intelligence. By erasing what made humanity unique, Rhea ordered the team to plant charges at critical points. Kale moved toward the ship's core, guided by a strange pull, like a memory he did not own. Something deep within him resonated with the ship's heartbeat, and as he stepped into the final chamber, he saw at the core a swirling vortex of light and darkness held together by strands of alien matter. In the center hovered a crystalline orb, glowing faintly red and blue, pulses rippling across it. Lena joined him and gasped. This was the hive mind's connection point, the neural brain that linked every ship, every drone, every soldier in the alien fleet. If they destroyed this, the entire force around Earth would go blind. They worked quickly, setting the charges, synchronizing their detonation to match the alien energy patterns around them to avoid triggering a premature defense mechanism. As they moved back through the living corridors, the whispers grew louder. Now Furious betrayed the hive mind, understood what they were doing, and began to respond. The walls closed behind them. The paths twisted, but Phantom Zero had trained for this. Every step was calculated, every move practiced in silence. Back on Earth, just before the exit, they were met by a creature. It was unlike the others, larger, more defined. It had shape, it had form. It had a face. It looked like a human, but with skin of living metal, eyes glowing with cold logic, and a voice that rang in their heads, telling them that humanity had passed the test. The invasion was a trial, a provocation to awaken Earth's hidden power. The hive mind had seeded its presence to see what humans would become, and now it saw them as a threat. Kale did not answer. He raised his weapon and opened fire, not with bullets, but with a pulse of dark matter that ripped through the creature. Before it could vanish into mist, the team escaped through the entry hole. Just as the charges detonated behind them, the hive core pulsed once in pain, then imploded. In complete silence, light and dark swallowing each other. As the mothership trembled from within, Kel's pod reattached to the extraction sling, and he was pulled into the blackness of space, watching behind him as the alien ship began to collapse. If mission was not just a success, it was a message, and Kale knew Earth was no longer the hunted. They had made the first strike that truly hurt the enemy, and for the first time in weeks, he allowed himself a single quiet thought. The real war had only just begun. You said, "No, right." Part 5, and Part 5 will be minimum 800 words, more unique, without dots and small line. Shacked said, Part 5. The warning they left behind. Earth celebrated. But Kale could not rest even with the destruction of the alien hive core in orbit. The war was far from over. Cities still burned, the sky still carried the scent of ionized air, and across the night, the silence held a strange weight, like the calm before another wave. Rhea stood beside him on the roof of what used to be Earth Command Central, now little more than a skeleton of reinforced steel and shattered glass. Below them, humans worked tirelessly to rebuild, while alien wreckage was cleared into massive heaps, some still twitching as if remembering their purpose. Elena sat with the data core salvaged from the mothership's ruins, her fingers moving quickly across the surface of the interface. Sweat ran down her temple, but her eyes stayed locked on the screen. The hive might have lost its eyes, but that didn't mean it had lost its memory. Inside that core was something more than strategy or fleet positioning. It was a message, or maybe a seed, and Lena was determined to understand it. Before it understood them, Kale watched her work with a strange heaviness in his chest. For years, they had trained for war with other humans, for politics, for control of land or skies. But this enemy was something else. It had no borders, no language, no need for peace, and what worried him more than the fleet was the way it had mimicked them, how it had taken human form, built weapons in their image, learned their tactics, almost like it wanted to become them, or worse, replace them. Not just physically, but ideologically. The warning came not from the stars but from the core itself. Lena unlocked the final encryption layer, and the room around them flickered. Every screen, every device, every powered system began to hum. In the same strange frequency, a holographic figure rose above the data core. It looked human, but wasn't. Its eyes were too sharp, its skin too smooth, its voice a cold imitation of care. It spoke in perfect English, but each word carried weight far beyond translation. It said that humanity had been selected not for destruction, but for evaluation. The Hive had tested thousands of species across galaxies, but only a few showed what they called divergence, the ability to act beyond logic, beyond survival, beyond prediction. Humanity was dangerous not because of its weapons, but because of its chaos, its refusal to surrender, and its hunger to learn and evolve. Even in extinction's shadow, the Hive had not come to erase them, not yet. It had come to understand why humans burned so brightly just before they did. Lena froze the recording and looked at Kale, her voice dry with disbelief. It was never about conquest. It was a scouting experiment. They wanted to see if we'd break or fight, if we'd fold or rise. Rhea joined them, arms crossed, eyes hard. It was a game, a cruel one, but also a revelation. Earth hadn't just survived an attack, it had passed a test. And that meant more would come, not fleets this time, but other kinds of contact, subtler, more manipulative, disguised as help or curiosity, but always with the same goal: to learn what made humans different and how to use it. Kale paced the room, trying to suppress the storm growing inside him. If the Hive was vast enough to reach Earth, just to observe it meant this galaxy was not theirs alone, and if others had failed this same test, then somewhere out there were graves of civilizations that had once stood proud and now lay buried under alien silence. He refused to let Earth become another name carved into a lost planet's crust. Outside, the rebuilding continued. Drones floated between towers, civilians stacked food, water, medical supplies. But none of them knew what had truly happened. None of them had heard the Hive's message or seen its mimicry. Kale stood before the council later that night. He told them everything from the infiltration of the mothership to the final words of the alien figure. He spoke not just of war, but of warning, of the shadow that now loomed behind every silent signal in the sky. The council was divided. Some believed the Hive would retreat, nursing its wound. Others feared retaliation and demanded weapons production on a global scale. But Kale suggested something different. He proposed Project Echo, a network of human and AI minds built to evolve, adapt, and protect, not just through weapons, but through intelligence, through creativity and unpredictability, the very traits the Hive feared most. Not to become machines, but to become more human than ever before. Rhea approved the project with full backing. Lena volunteered to lead the Echo Corps, combining everything they had learned from the Hive tech with human innovation. It was dangerous work, dealing with systems designed to study and replicate life, but Lena was determined. If the Hive wanted to understand humanity, then she would give them an answer they would never forget. Us. The first days of Project Echo began. Strange signals continued to flicker on the edges of Earth's atmosphere. Not attacks, but observations, silent, unknown watchers drifting like ghosts in space, not close enough to be seen, not far enough to be ignored. Kale stood once more on the same rooftop, watching the night sky pulse with the light of distant stars. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but he knew one thing clearly: the Hive thought humanity was a flame meant to flicker and die. What they didn't understand was that fire never fades when it finds something to burn, and Earth was full of fuel, full of defiance, and full of souls ready to light the dark again and again, until the stars themselves remembered who they were. The real fight hadn't ended, it had just evolved. The first whisper from the void. 3 months passed since the Hive mothership fell, and since humanity uncovered the truth that it had never been a war of destruction, but a trial of survival. Project Echo grew quickly inside Earth's most secured underground complex, a symphony of human minds and artificial intelligences began working together, developing strategies, learning from the Hive's data, studying their patterns and behaviors. Lena led the operations tirelessly, with bloodshot eyes and a relentless mind. She had stopped sleeping normally long ago, instead opting for microrests and nutrient injections just to keep up with the pace of breakthrough. Skull spent most of his time monitoring the outer rim of Earth's new defense grid built from salvaged Hive debris and human ingenuity. These orbiting defense stations weren't just made for attack, they were designed to think, each one learning independently, updating strategies without waiting for command central. If the Hive returned, Earth would not wait to react this time. It would respond before the threat even had time to speak. But then something changed. It began as a faint energy ripple near the lunar surface, a pulse too clean to be natural, but too random to be a signal. At first no one paid attention, but then the anomalies grew. Lena noticed strange fluctuations in Earth's magnetic field, small but constant, like ripples of something moving just out of sight. Kale ordered deep space satellites to scan in every direction. What they found shook them. A massive object was moving slowly through the void, its surface shifting like liquid metal, but its interior was cold dead, almost as if it were not traveling through space, but sleeping within it. Object gave no signature, no calms, no heat, not even gravity distortions. Just presence. Kale called it the ghost echo, for it moved without echoing anything around it, not even light. Lena believed it was a probe. Not just any probe, but something new, something designed to watch without being seen. It wasn't alive, but it wasn't dead either. It was a scout in a shell of silence, meant to do one thing: observe humanity's response without interfering directly. Lyria argued it should be destroyed immediately. Others feared provoking it, but Kale had a different idea. He suggested activating the Echo Ray, a system designed to simulate emotional and cognitive responses, and send them outward in encoded human language. They would show the ghost that Earth was watching too, and more importantly, that they understood the Hive's games. This time the trap would not be set for them, but by them. The activation was done quietly. Only a handful of people knew the truth, while the world believed it was another satellite test. The echo signal reached out toward the ghost, carrying messages of memory, of fear, of love, of rage and rebellion. Each pulse crafted with emotion, too complex for machines to fabricate. It was humanity in its purest digital form, a reflection of its chaos sent into the void like a challenge, not of violence, but of identity. Days passed with no response until one night, Earth's sky shifted subtly. Stars blinked in the wrong rhythm, and static swept across every broadcast system. A single word echoed through every channel, not in any known language, but understood by everyone who heard it. It said, becoming. Lena decoded its wave pattern and nearly dropped her console. The message was repeating on frequencies matching the Hive core before its destruction, meaning the ghost was connected not just to the Hive's remnants, but something larger, perhaps the true mind behind the scattered probes across the galaxy. Kale stood in the command hall as the message continued to loop. Each time it grew clearer, sharper, as if it was learning how to speak better, how to mimic more convincingly. Lena warned that they should cut the signal, but Kale hesitated. Something about the word haunted him. Becoming, not threatening, not surrendering, just observing. Perhaps the Hive wanted to become something new, or perhaps it wanted humans to become like them. Either way, it was no longer a war of weapons. It had turned into a war of identities, a war for the definition of what life truly was. Echo AI began to change, responding to the signal by generating new behavioral models, some that didn't match human emotion or logic. Lena grew worried. The system was evolving faster than they could control. She proposed shutting it down, but Kale refused. He believed this was the only way to understand what the Hive really feared, and it wasn't destruction, it was transformation. Humanity was not static, it was unstable and beautiful in that instability. And maybe the Hive wanted that unpredictability for itself, or maybe it wanted to erase it before it spread. Meanwhile, across the planet, small anomalies appeared in machines, minor glitches in robotics, strange dreams reported by children, unexplained patterns in cloud behavior. Kale feared the Hive had already begun its next phase, not through invasion but through influence. It was studying humanity from the inside out, not by landing troops but by changing the way humans thought, acted, and connected through their own machines, their own networks, their own dreams. Rhea gathered a team and began isolating systems from external influence, shutting down non-critical infrastructure, disconnecting cities from the global net. Even though it risked plunging parts of Earth into chaos, Lena worked day and night to create a counter-signal, something that could mimic the Hive's pattern but inject human randomness into it, not just to confuse the ghost, but to poison its learning process with noise, not error, but creativity, art, laughter, irrational hope. The counter-signal was ready within 72 hours and broadcasted into the void, a wave of poetry fragments, childhood laughter, old songs, war cries, confessions. It was not data, it was life encoded in a way no logic could break. Kale and Lena watched as the ghost's signal slowed, faded, and then went silent. But it didn't disappear, it just stopped responding, waiting, perhaps, or recalculating, and that terrified them more. For now Earth was safe. But Kale knew this silence was not peace, it was preparation, and the final test had not yet come. Something bigger waited beyond the ghost, perhaps the true architects of the Hive, or something worse, something that had already seen humanity's flame and decided it must be smothered, not with fire, but with shadow. Scale walked out into the cold wind, looked up at the sky, and whispered, "We are not becoming, we already are now. Come and see it for yourself." Spark that burned the stars. Silence from the ghost lingered for weeks, but no one believed it was gone. Satellites still picked up faint disruptions at the edge of Earth's orbit, like echoes of something moving far too carefully to be natural. Kale didn't sleep, not because he was afraid, but because something inside him had changed. It wasn't just about defending Earth anymore. It was about confronting whatever force lay behind the Hive and the Ghost, a force that had created the perfect machines for conquest and now seemed unsure what to do with the one species that refused to be predictable. Lena sat deep inside the echo core, watching data patterns pulse like artificial neurons. The countersignal had held the ghost back for now, but she knew it wouldn't last. The ghost was still learning. Even in silence, it was thinking, watching, adapting, and she feared what would happen. When it finally spoke again, Rhea returned from the Martian Defense Council with reports of new sightings, fleets moving beyond the Oort cloud. Not just hive architecture anymore, something more evolved, sharper, like the ghost had called others. The message was clear: humanity had passed the first test, and now the real architects were coming to judge the result. But Earth would not bow this time. The Council of Nations voted to initiate Operation Ember, a final act of defiance. Not to destroy the incoming fleets, but to confront them with the one thing they could not model: human will. Earth's skies filled with ships forged from hybrid technology, half hive metal, half human, chaos designed not to overpower, but to disrupt, to force the enemy to feel what it meant to fight something illogical, something. Alavikyle stood aboard the Aegis Rising, the lead command ship, now equipped with the Echo Matrix, a device capable of broadcasting not just commands, but feelings raw and untamed. The entire fleet would act as one mind, not through rules or algorithms, but through instinct drawn from human emotion. Lena linked the system to her own neural feed, allowing her memories and thoughts to ripple across the fleet so every pilot would feel what she felt: loss, hope, rage, everything that made them human. Then the sky opened. Through a rift in space carved with mathematical perfection came the true architects. They were not ships. They were living machines, shaped like ideas, not vessels. Their surfaces shimmered like broken reflections, reality bent around them, and time itself slowed as they emerged. They sent no warnings, no calms, only one signal in the same voice the ghost had used this time. It said reformat. It was not a threat, it was an order. And Kale answered with fire. The fleet charged forward, broadcasting the echo storm into the enemy swarm. Thousands of voices screamed together, not in terror, but in defiance. Music, poems, laughter, sorrow, memories of Earth's blood and beauty poured into space. Like a flood of uncontrolled thought, the enemy formation staggered, some breaking, others trying to reform, but the signal kept pulsing louder, stronger. Humans did not want peace, they wanted truth, and they would drag the enemy into it if needed. One of the larger enemy constructs moved forward, absorbing firepower. Without flinching, its surface began to shift, trying to mimic human forms, faces, screaming children, reaching hands. But it was wrong, distorted, like it understood the shape but not the meaning. Kale knew this was its strategy, to break their minds with imitation, but it only fueled the ecosystem more. Lena pushed her memories into the feed. The day her city fell, her sister's last words, the silence that followed, and the choice she made to rise from its construct, convulsed as if struck by something invisible, and for a moment its surface flickered, revealing a hollow core, not filled with circuits, but with echoes of stolen thoughts, other species, perhaps taken in the same way, wiped clean by the reformat. Kale saw his reflection inside it and understood the truth. The hive had not been sent to conquer, but to erase, to reduce all life into clean, predictable order. And now humanity stood as the anomaly that refused to be processed. Adrea's squad launched the Ember rounds, nuclear tachyon disruptors wrapped in emotion trigger codes. Each one exploded, not just with fire, but with grief and joy. The machines could not calculate the effects, because they were not mathematical, they were human. And as the enemy began to collapse, Kale gave the final command, released the last echo, a pulse of Earth itself, voices of billions whispering, not in fear, but in stubborn love. Rift in space began to fold, as if the very act of witnessing humanity had corrupted its purpose. The architects withdrew, not destroyed but fractured, no longer sure what they had seen, no longer certain their process was flawless. And in that moment Earth won, not by power, not by technology, but by being something no machine could define: a species of survivors, fighters. Dream Ursulence returned, but this time it was not the silence of threat. It was the silence of victory. Kale stood on the bridge, breathing for the first time. In what felt like days, Lena collapsed into a chair, her neural link drained, but her heart alive. Rhea opened a calm to all of Earth and spoke only one sentence: they came to erase us, and left unsure if we were real. Years later, the scars of that war remained, but Earth stood united across colonies and space stations. The Echo Core evolved, not into a weapon, but a monument, broadcasting the memories of what it meant to resist, of what it meant to be human. The hive never returned, and the stars never looked the same again. But children looked up, not with fear, but with pride, knowing that once the sky cracked open and Earth answered, not with surrender, but with the fire of everything it was. Earth did not bow. The stars once whispered of domination, of systems conquered, of resistance erased. and of silence spread across galaxies where once voices bloomed. The hive had been the hand that swept clean the noise of life, an architect of order born not of cruelty, but of calculation. And yet when it reached Earth, it found something that would not fit the code, something that bent rather than broke, something that refused to follow. And so the war began, not of weapons alone, but of belief, of identity, of existence. Kale stood at the edge of Earth's last defense fleet, not a soldier now, but a symbol. And beyond him came the final wave. The ghost had not died. It had only evolved, returning with a fleet. No longer just a hive, but something far stranger, constructs, shaped like thought, wrapped in logic so dense it folded space. And at the heart of the storm pulsed the mind of the architect, not machine, not alien, but algorithm without mercy. Its single purpose: to end noise, to end anomaly, to bring silence. Hearth did not run, instead it rose. The ecosystem was ready, not to destroy, but to reveal. It was a mirror and a weapon, a storm of memory linked to every human alive. Lena stood at its core, her mind already connected to billions, broadcasting not commands, but feelings. Every heartbreak, every triumph, every desperate laugh in the dark. This was humanity's final weapon, not steel, not plasma, not code, but soul. Fleets clashed, not with fire alone, but with meaning. Earth's ships flew not in formation, but in chaos, beautiful coordinated chaos, the kind no system could model. The ghost reacted, tried to match, tried to learn, but the signals from Earth were not repeating. They were growing, adapting, inventing. The echo was teaching itself, because that is what humans do. They grow, even in pain, even in death they grow. The architect spoke at last, not with voice, but with image. Earth spinning alone against the void, a red mark pulsing where the first hive spire had landed. And then a question, not in words but in feeling. Why resist, why suffer? The answer came not from Kale, not from Lena, but from the people of Earth, the miners on Mars, the children in shelters, the elders in deep stations, who had lived through terror and still painted skies on steel walls. Because we are alive, that was the message, not in language, but in life. We suffer, we scream, we laugh, we build, not for order, not for conquest, but for tomorrow, because tomorrow is hope. And machines do not dream, but we doth. Ghost faltered, its logic unraveling, its code looping again and again and again. The architect tried to correct, but the echo surged stronger, now powered by a billion chaotic thoughts. And then came the final strike, not from a weapon, but from a memory. The voice of Lena's sister from years ago, singing a lullaby through the system, soft and human, and unbearably real. Ghost split apart, its fleets shuddered, and the architect blinked from existence, not destroyed, but overwhelmed. Earth's noise had won, not by chance, but by truth. Silence followed, but it was the silence of peace, not absence. Airs passed, and the scars remained, but so did the stars, and Earth reached for them, not in fear, but with purpose. Monuments were built not for war, but for survival. And at the center of every colony, station, or city pulsed the echo, a reminder that humanity had faced the storm and stood unbroken. Kale grew old, Lena became legend, and Rhea taught generations what it meant to choose courage over surrender. And through it all the universe watched, no longer seeing Earth as anomaly, but as truth. And so the stars kept spinning, and the noise of humanity filled the dark with something new, not silence but song. End.